In the song Surface Pressure from Encanto, Luisa, voiced by Jessica Darrow, sings about her family's heavy expectations and the way she has internalized this stress. So it's fitting that the composer Lin-Manuel Miranda musicalizes Luisa's situation in the song using the technique of lyrical stress. And it's through looking at the lyrical stress of the song that we can finally answer,
Drip, 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 that'll never stop.
Why is this chorus so dang catchy? This is how Surface Pressure works. Welcome to Howard Ho Music. After my breakdowns of We Don't Talk About Bruno and Dos Oruguitas, I too have felt the stress of living up to expectations. Explaining obscure music theory concepts in an understandable way can be challenging at times, but this video on Surface Pressure will not focus on analyzing music, but the lyrics, a type of analysis called prosody. I've mentioned prosody before in my Frozen Elsa video and in my Dos Oruguitas video when I talk about how a melody perfectly expresses the lyric. Surface Pressure centers its prosody around the rhymes in the song and how they create lyrical and musical stress, which translates into the audience feeling the emotional stress of Luisa herself. And we can see her stress manifested in classic symptoms of stress, eye twitching and hyperventilation. I mean, there's a reason this song charted in the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100 and went platinum. And no, it's not because Luisa likes to flatten platinum. It's so dang catchy, but also it's relatable. We as listeners can relate to Luisa's struggle with our own stresses at work and at school and in our families and relationships, and through the song feel seen. In fact, Lin did write this song to make someone feel seen, his real-life older sister, who often had to shoulder the family burdens that he didn't. But the song is connecting with people far beyond his own family. Here's my colleague Annika with more on that.
We know Luisa's gift is physical strength. So, okay, strong character. They're obviously gonna have big muscles, right? Well, Bethany Robinson made a great point in her Encanto video about how female characters who are supposedly physically strong don't usually get the visible muscles that might come with it in the real world. Dylan Ekron, an artist who worked on Encanto, claimed in a tweet that the artist had to really fight to give Luisa muscles and a larger frame. Women aren't exactly encouraged to gain muscle because it goes against our thin, delicate beauty standards. Many female athletes struggle with balancing their very active lifestyle with attaining the perfect female body. But it's so refreshing to see a variety of body types and looks represented in Encanto, even with Mirabel and her glasses. Many women have started making TikToks dancing to Surface Pressure because they relate to how Luisa looks. Oh hey, it's Martha from High School Musical. But tons of people are also relating to how Luisa feels. Because of her gift, Luisa is expected to do so many chores, not just for her own family, but for every family in town. She wrangles donkeys, lifts bridges, moves churches, reroutes entire rivers.
Luisa, can you reroute the river?
Will do!
And no one even says please. I'm serious. Abuela literally claps her hands and says music, and Luisa knows that's her cue to grab that piano. Everyone else's gifts are kinda glamorous and fun. Since strength is practical, Luisa is put to work. She is made to feel like serving the family 24/7 is the only way she can be a part of it. Luisa is also the only one we see actively working to better her gift, because just being her, just existing with her gift isn't enough. She believes it's her sole responsibility to protect the family or else she lets everyone down. Even when she's explaining her mental health struggles to Mirabel in Surface Pressure, she's still taking care of Mirabel, carrying her, protecting her, fixing her glasses. But who's taking care of Luisa?
Indeed, the song Surface Pressure acts as a sort of cry for help from Luisa. Here's how. The first verse of Surface Pressure features these rhymes which all have something in common. But to understand that, I'm gonna need to explain some concepts in prosody first. The concept of prosody comes from poetry, which I know, but all it means is that poetry treats words like music. The most famous Shakespearean prosody buzzword is iambic pentameter.
The iambic pentameter.
Iambic pentameter.
The iambic pentameters, which is a horrible phrase.
But all it means is that we have a bar of words, or a meter, with penta, or 5 beats per bar, and each of the 5 beats of this bar consists of an iamb, a weak stressed syllable followed by a strong stressed syllable. Da-dum, 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 da-dum. The reason Shakespeare used iambic pentameter wasn't to be complicated, but actually was quite the opposite.
Now, it's often been pointed out that this verse form approximates more closely than any other verse form to our natural everyday speech.
Iambic pentameter is pretty good at sounding like normal speech. A lot of times you'll find yourself unconsciously expressing thoughts iambically. For example, in the sentence I just said, a lot of times you'll find yourself unconsciously expressing thoughts iambically. It's a thing that actually happens in real life.
In everyday conversations, or in a book, a paper, or a telly.
You've just said one. Or in a book, a paper, or the telly.
Well, that's not a very immortal line.
But if iambic sounds natural, then its opposite, the trochee, dedum, sounds a little more breathless. Unlike an iamb, which has a strong ending, the second weak syllable in a trochee makes it less satisfying, and so the trochee wants to roll on to the next strong syllable. In fact, the word trochee itself derives from the Greek word for rolling, and you can find trochees in the works of Shakespeare,
Double, double, toil and trouble.
and Edgar Allan Poe.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary,
which, according to this masterclass article, helps to create a tone of despair. And it's a tone of despair and death that you get from a melody known as the Dies Irae, a 13th century Gregorian chant written in trochee. It's a melody that is often referenced in film scores to symbolize something ominous or deadly. The Dies Irae was even parodied as funeral music in Rent. So it's not too surprising that Lin has chosen the opening notes of Surface Pressure
I'm the strong one.
to reference the Dies Irae as well, which, yes, is a trochee phrase. In fact, that's what all of these rhymes from the first verse of Surface Pressure have in common. They are all trochees, creating a tone of despair and stress. Each of these rhymes is two-syllable, with a strong stress on the first syllable and a weak stress on the second one, trochees. Now there are two caveats to what I've just said. Yes, I know many of these are not perfect rhymes. For example, earth is and worth is are perfect rhymes because they rhyme everything except for that W sound in worth. Whereas nervous is not a perfect rhyme because it has a V sound that is not reflected in the other words, and churches is not perfect because it has a ch sound which is also not reflected in the other words. They're imperfect or slant rhymes. But in this style of music known as reggaeton, slant rhymes are part of the genre. And as I explained in a previous video on In the Heights, Lin understands this distinction as well and is including slant rhymes to be true to certain musical genres like reggaeton and hip-hop.
Musical theater places a very pure emphasis on pure rhyme, not rhyming moon with doom. Not a real rhyme, but moon with June.
Lin is probably referencing people like Stephen Sondheim, who wrote, "In the theater, true rhyme works best on every level." But in establishing rap as a type of expression on Broadway, Lin needs to also demonstrate to hip-hop fans that hip-hop language can exist on Broadway without being watered down. And part of that is the use of slant rhymes and assonance.
I think hip-hop, the reward for the listener is often the unexpected rhyme.
5:46 in the morning, crack of dawning.
It's Biggie rhyming awning with good morning because of the way he says it.
And number two, I'm talking about end rhymes. Within these opening lines of the song, we do get a series of single syllable rhymes, but since these are not at the ends of lines but within the line, they are known as internal rhymes, which are less prominent in the song structure. So what does it mean to have a bunch of end rhymes in trochee? Well, it comes down to the idea of stress. A general rule in rhymes is that in order for two words to rhyme, they should rhyme everything that starts with the stressed syllable and after. It's why such a long word like anti-disestablishmentarianism can rhyme with a much shorter word like barbarianism. Everything starting from the stress onward is what makes the rhyme rhyme. And by contrast, Broadway technically doesn't rhyme with delay, because even though the final syllables of way and lay do rhyme, the stressed syllables broad and lay do not rhyme. Unless, of course, you pronounce Broadway the way Judith Light does in Tick, Tick, Boom.
It's too arty for Broadway.
But in any case, the point still stands. Rhymes rhyme from the stressed syllable onward. This means that once Lin has set up the trochee as the rhyme, he's making a promise to the audience that he's going to keep up this pattern of multisyllabic rhymes, which increases the difficulty and, yes, stress of coming up with those rhymes. And it reminds me of this other song that also used trochee rhymes to create a feeling of being under pressure.
I'm the strong one. I'm not nervous.
He's nervous, but on the surface he looks calm and ready.
Under the surface, I feel berserk as a tightrope walker in a three-ring circus.
Not only does Lin maintain this multisyllabic rhyme scheme, but most of these rhymes are actually the same rhymed syllables, and is. And you can hear the amount of effort required to sustain this multisyllabic rhyme, especially in his use of the word Cerberus. Now Cerberus, the mythical three-headed dog that guards the gates of Hades, is 3 syllables. But in order for it to fit into our 2-syllable pattern, Louisa pronounces it
Cerberus,
getting extra points not just for maintaining this rhyme, but also making this cool reference to Greek mythology. But all this then gets interrupted with a series of single-syllable end rhymes, which would mean less stress, right?
a floor crack, the straw in the stack, that breaks the camel's back. What breaks the camel's back?
Well, no. Lin is actually setting up the single-syllable words to build tension as the music increases intensity. The short rhyme words allow for more percussive lyrics, which bring us to the chorus of the song.
Pressure like a drip, drip, drip that'll never stop.
Why is this moment so catchy? In the beginning, each beat had on average just 1 stress syllable. So in the opening line of the song, I'm the strong one. I'm not nervous. That's 1 bar, and within that 1 bar, there are 4 beats, and because there's 1 stress per beat, we get a total of 4 stresses. But in the chorus, pressure like a drip, 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 that'll never stop. That's 8 strong stresses. Each beat now has 2 strong stress syllables. That means he's doubled the stress syllables, doubling the stress of Louisa. Adding even more stress, these syllables are full of plosives, percussive, impactful consonants that push air out like P, K, D, and T. So even though the single syllables are easier to rhyme and less of a burden, but there are now twice as many of them, and they're packed with plosives to hit even harder. In fact, having twice as many stresses in this bar means that in the next bar, Louisa has to rest, singing only whoa to balance the heavier load of the previous bar. But the real catchiness of this moment comes not just from the doubling of the stresses, but the music Lin puts behind this doubling. See, as the music ramps up to the chorus, there's more excitement and activity and musical momentum until the music seems to get less busy, less intense, and as a result, less supportive. And this is not just a musical metaphor for how she feels unsupported, but it's also a visual one. Right before she sings this, we actually see the ground give way beneath her feet. To think of it another way, it's kind of like Lin is doing a musical version of a dolly zoom, which is accomplished by zooming in on someone just as the camera is moving away from them, or vice versa. Just as the melody is zooming in on her, Louisa is saying twice as many things, the music underneath her is dollying away, becoming more sparse. And just as a dolly zoom is really good at centering a person while their surroundings warp around them, this is a moment in the song that really centers Louisa and her perspective. And it draws us in, or in other words, it's catchy. Side note, as part of this sparse structure, the clicking tick-tock that you hear in the background is actually voiced by Lin-Manuel Miranda himself. The transition from the chorus back to the verse also shows us the idea of how lyrical stress shapes the song. While the chorus is operating with double the stress, by the end of the chorus, Lin needs to transition us back to the 1 stress per beat feeling of the verses. So at the end of the chorus, he rhymes all with fall.
Who am I if I can't carry it all? If I fall,
But then the word fall becomes
falter.
a trochee word that brings us right back to the verses. It's just another way Lin is showing us that he knows he's stretching out the stresses of lyrical time. Now, if the verse and the chorus show Louisa's world of unending stress, then the bridge shows us what life without stress looks like.
Wait, if I could shake the crushing weight.
Wait, shake, and wait are all single-syllable words. Not only that, but wait and wait are homophones, meaning they sound exactly the same, showing that these rhymes took a lot less effort than the more exotic sounding rhymes like Cerberus. Not only that, but they are surrounded by way less stress. These two bars have 3 and 2 stresses respectively. That means we're now down to 0.75 and 0.5 stresses per beat. Truly, this is the less stress paradise that Louisa only dreams of. The only time we even have a longer break in the song between stresses is literally on the word
Breaks!
Lin here is using prosody to illustrate the concept of the word breaks by placing a break in the music. He did something similar in the song previously on the word
Never stop.
He does this again toward the end of the song when the music itself is helping to supply drum hits that go along with the lyrical stresses, except on the word breaks, where there is a slight break.
No cracks, no breaks.
And finally, the song ends on the word pressure, a final trochee that ends the song the way Louisa fears most, on the weak part of the beat.
No pressure!
Symbolizing how she feels weak and accentuated by the fact that that last syllable is not supported by musical accompaniment, but instead a soft whoosh, which sends her into an anxiety attack. Thankfully, Mirabelle is there to give her a hug. And that is how Surface Pressure works. Now, there are many more songs left in Encanto to talk about, so please subscribe and stay tuned. I'd like to thank my patrons on Patreon, including my newest patrons, Albert, Brian Smith, David W., Dusty Davidson, Wah Yan, Avi Flax, Jen, Ian Masters, Kelly Reed, Helen T. Wilcox, Louis Tomprose, Paul McLanahan, Catherine Fung, Sarah Hang Hartsey, Boglarka Komaromi, Martin Groves, Ariella Jaglom Gazin, Maya Berry, Rebecca Lynn, Derek T., Kathy Freeman, Katie O'Donnell, Tracy Proctor, Yolanda Van Peybrook, Jordan Espo, Shireen Jungklaus, and Haley Christie. I'd also like to thank my collaborator Annika and you for watching the video. Thanks, and I'll see you again next time. Peace.